on August 22nd, 1969, the Beatles gathered at John Lennon's home for their final photo session. It was the last time all four Beatles were ever together. After the breakup, one question followed them everywhere. When are the Beatles getting back together?
Well, I mean, the answer is, that when everything is sorted out, when everything's gradually sorted out, all our visa problems, all our business problems, and all of that, we might do some stuff together.
For years, the answer was uncertain.
At one period when they're asking me, I say, nah, never, what the hell, go back, no, not me. And then there came to a period when I thought, well, why not?
There were moments when a reunion felt possible, an album where all four appeared, writing and playing, and even a moment when they nearly shared a stage again. Finally, after a decade, the question found an irrevocable answer in the tragic event of December 8th, 1980. This is the story of the Beatles getting back together, in their own words. In the wake of the breakup, a steady crossfire of accusations, veiled messages, and musical replies, especially between John and Paul, kept the Beatles locked in each other's orbit, but a long way from coming together again.
I was too scared to break away from the Beatles, but I've been looking to it since '65 when we stopped touring. And maybe Paul had too, I don't know.
Over the years, I had such a lot of songs mounting up that I really wanted to do, but I only got my quota of 1 or 2 tunes per album. Mm-hmm. And that way I would have had to have recorded about 100 Beatle albums just to get out the tunes I had in 1965.
And so from '65 on, I was sort of vaguely looking for somewhere to go, but didn't have the nerve to really step out in the boat by myself, push the boat off. So I sort of hung around.
I don't really remember anything about the Beatle days. It seems like a sort of, previous incarnation when I think about it.
I couldn't put my finger on one thing why we broke up. It was time, and we were spreading out, Well, they were spreading out more than I was. I would have stayed with the band.
I was very keen. I was very keen on the Beatles. I didn't see why it shouldn't carry on. John, I think, mainly had become fed up with it, really. He just wanted to do something else. He'd met Yoko, and I don't think he wanted to play with his little play friends anymore, I did.
I don't think that old gang of mine, that's all over. When I met Yoko is when you meet your first woman and you leave the guys at the bar and you don't go play football anymore and you don't go play snooker or billiards. So once I found the woman, the boys became of no interest whatsoever. That's it. That old gang of mine, it's all over. You know that song.
Yoko sat in that very chair.
In a hostile environment of lawsuits and unresolved Apple affairs, Paul McCartney started a musical crossfire with John Lennon, taking subtle shots at him on his song Too Many People from the album Ram.
It starts off with too many people going underground. That was your first mistake. And the first mistake bit is referring to us and all the others about you took your lucky break and broke it in two. Now, if that doesn't mean what it says, I don't know what.
John fired back with the brutal lyrics on How Do You Sleep, mocking Paul's music and legacy.
So I wrote a reciprocal song, and it was actually Klein's line, long line of it. And since you've gone, you're just another day. I think it's the funniest thing I've ever heard. I don't think that about Paul all my life, or all the time. I wrote it in immediate response to when I heard his messages coming off his album,
John actually had Alan Klein and Yoko in the room suggesting lyrics during writing sessions. In his song How Do You Sleep, the line, "The only thing you did was yesterday," was apparently Alan Klein's suggestion. And John said, "Hey, great, put that in." I could see the laughs they had doing it, and I had to work very hard not to take it too seriously.
It's an angry song. Well, I'll explain it to him. I'll even write to him, if he really, really thinks it's really, really serious.
But at the back of my mind, I was thinking, wait a minute, All I Ever Did Was Yesterday? I suppose that's a funny pun, but all I ever did was yesterday, Let It Be, Long and Winding Road, Ellen Rigby, Lady Madonna. Fuck you, John.
Ringo, always the peacemaker, made statements to lower tensions and bring everyone together.
And we'll always be tied up with each other in some way, because we've signed a lot of papers. Since we stayed together for 20 years or something.
In contrast to the crossfire between John and Paul, Ringo released the song Early 1970, referencing his former bandmates individually in the most affectionate way. He offered a self-deprecating picture of his musical abilities and expressed the hope that all four would play together in the future.
When I go to town, I wanna see all three.
Beyond the bitterness, they were all trying to envision a future moving past the Beatles.
I can't see, there's no reason why we should ever play together. I mean, listen to the music. Would George have ever flourished like that if we'd carried on with the group? No chance.
They can't understand why we should actually enjoy splitting up. But there's a time, there's a time when people grow up and they leave home or whatever they do, and they go for a change, and it was really time for a change.
It's just natural. It's not a great disaster. People keep talking about it as if it's the end of the earth. It's only a rock group that split up. It's nothing important. You have all the old records there if you want to reminisce.
In 1971, George Harrison set out to do something no rock musician had done before. He organized the concert for Bangladesh, widely recognized as the first major rock benefit concert in history. Riding the success of All Things Must Pass, George assembled an all-star lineup for 2 shows at Madison Square Garden. The event could bring the Beatles back together on stage, united for a humanitarian cause. Ringo joined without hesitation, as he would in many other projects for George. John Lennon initially agreed to appear, but withdrew after George insisted that Yoko Ono not perform by his side. Paul McCartney declined as well, stating to the press, "I didn't play on George's Bangladesh concert, because if I turned up and John had turned up, then the headlines around the world would have screamed, 'The Beatles are together again.'"
Because whatever happens to the Beatles, we'll always be sort of friends, So all I want for the Beatles is their individual happiness. And whether that's in a collective form or not remains to be seen.
In February 1972, John Lennon and Yoko Ono sent a letter to Paul and Linda McCartney, motivated by their shared interest in the political situation in Ireland, following Wings' release of Give Ireland Back to the Irish. They invited Wings to participate in a charity concert to support Ireland, along with the Plastic Ono Band and the Rolling Stones. Right on, brother and sister. Would you do a Madison Square with Wings, Plastic Ono, plus the Stones? We've already talked to Mick. It's easy. Let's forget our past and save some people. Good luck anyway. We're proud of you. The postscriptum read, "No AK at Madison Square Garden if it's uncool," presumably referring to Alan Klein. Paul did not respond to the invitation. The joint concert never materialized.
We've always rarely been friends. I mean, we've had our little niggles.
Yes.
But, we've always talked to each other,
Yeah.
So it hasn't been as...
Even through the Cold War.
Even through, yeah. Well, it's never been as tough as the press sort of made out,
Yeah.
We did at least acknowledge each other all the time.
In 1973, Ringo released his 3rd solo album, which featured all of his former bandmates. It was the closest thing to a Beatles reunion, including songs written by John, Paul, and George, who also played on the record and produced.
John was there and George was there. So I said, "Well, come and play." He said, "Okay," and John says, "Okay." So we have the one track with John, George, and Ringo on it, right? Then I thought, well, we'll get Paul. So we phoned Paul in England and said, "Come on, you can't be left out of this. I've got a John track, I've got George's track, and I've got the other 2 on it, Have you got any tracks?" He says, "Yeah, I've got a track."
As he had so often done before, Ringo brought his former bandmates together.
I'm pleased that everybody's doing well, you know. I'm more pleased that Ringo's doing well, you know, that he's got himself a good niche. Because I knew Paul would be all right. What the hell am I worried about him? You know, I know he's going to be all right.
At this point now, I've just got meeting Paul again, you know, Paul McCartney. Because we drifted off away from each other through all the sue me, sue you blues and that. But just got met Paul, and I just know that, you know, whatever we've been through, there's always been something there that's tied us together. And it's like, you know, we've come through a big dark tunnel and we come back out the other end, and, you know, we're ready to really pick up to be friends again.
By the mid-70s, the once charged reunion question was being answered with a more measured and thoughtful tone.
Yeah, I think it's quite possible, because there'd be no reason not to. Now, whether we do live performances is another matter. That's a whole ball game. But it's quite feasible that we make records together.
I mean, I don't feel as though I owe John anything, or I don't owe Paul a thing, and I don't owe Ringo anything. I've certainly given them whatever I could, and I've taken from them whatever I could, but I don't think any of us owe each other a thing. And at this point in our time, you know, I'm really ready with John Lennon in particular to get down there and kick down a few doors and let's get going again.
And I think we've all established ourselves as individuals now. And so that's all over, and we are good friends. And whenever we meet, we spend a lot of time over a bottle of wine reminiscing, you know.
John Lennon was producing a new album for Harry Nilsson in early 1974, when Paul and Linda McCartney dropped in after the first night of recording. They were joined for an impromptu jam session, which included Harry Nilsson, Stevie Wonder, May Pang, and Beatles' longtime road manager Mal Evans.
I was at a session, and John was at a session, but it was such a mad session that I think what we did was jammed.
I jammed with Paul. I did actually play with Paul, yeah. We did a lot of stuff in L.A. Well, there was 50 other people playing too, and they're all just watching me and Paul, you know.
Just turn the fucking vocal mic up. McCartney's doing the harmony on the drums. Stevie might get on it there if he's
According to May Pang, they resumed their friendship as if nothing had happened. It was the last time John and Paul ever played together.
Just like more vocal, treble.
You see, it's strange, because at one period when they're asking me, I say, nah, never, what the hell, go back, no, not me. And then there came to a period when I thought, well, why not, if we felt like making a record or doing something. Everybody always envisages the stage show. To me, if we were together at the studio again, you know, the stage show something else. If we got something to say in a studio, okay. Now, when I'm saying that, I turn the paper and George is saying, not me, right? It's never got to a position where each one of us have wanted to do it at the same time. I think over the period of being apart, we've all thought, oh, that wouldn't be nice. That wouldn't be bad, you know. I mean, I've worked with Ringo and George. I haven't worked with Paul because we had a more difficult time, but now we're pretty close, you know.
The thing is that the business worries that were there are kind of gradually clearing up. So there's a possibility to do things with the Beatles and stuff, but I wouldn't think we get back together as a band.
And the other question is, would it be worth it? You know, but that is answered by if we wanted to do it. If we wanted to do it, then it'd be worth it. If we got in a studio together and thought we turn each other on.
As far as that's all concerned, it's really a question if anything really turns up that the four of us really want to do, then there's some kind of possibility that something might happen. But, you know, for now, it's a probably no-no.
You know, we've all leading our own lives. It's been 8 years, really. And I don't think an ad in the paper is going to do the trick. We have to want it personally ourselves. And not just to make $50 million or whatever the figure may be. We must do it because we want to be together as people first, and secondly, to be together for the music. And then everything else would fall into place. But at the moment, everybody is doing their own lives. And it feels to me a bit like saying, please go back to school.
If they did get together, what kind of scrutiny they'd be under? Nothing could fit the dream people had of them, so forget it, you know?
Yeah. The last offer was for $50 million, and it's crazy, you know. It's trying to put the responsibility of making the world a wonderful place again onto the Beatles.
Near the end of the decade, a select group of partygoers witnessed the closest thing to a live Beatles reunion when Paul McCartney, George Harrison, and Ringo Starr reunited to jam at Eric Clapton's wedding reception.
Eric had this big party, and it was funny because we walked into this big tent, and there's a stage there, and I said to Eric, "Oh, great, who's playing?" And he said, "You are." Everyone just came, wandering onto the stage, and we did, all the old favorites. George got up, and we played, and Paul was up. So that was the closest I think we ever got to actually getting back together.
John did not attend, but having 3 Beatles on the same stage for the first time since the last Apple rooftop performance prompted the question once again. Would there ever be a chance for all of the Beatles to reunite?
Well, I wouldn't say there would be, actually, because the last time I spoke to John, I just happened to ask him about whether he was writing songs and stuff, just out of my own curiosity. And he's told me he's kind of finished doing that, and he's not really into that. If you think about it, most of us do our jobs to arrive at a point where we no longer have to do our jobs, where we put our feet up and we can enjoy life for a change. And I think he's probably reached that point.
One day during Christmas, I think it's 1978, I'm in New York. They invite me to the Dakota to spend one of the Christmas days with them. And I sat down on the white couch in the white living room, and we're just making small talk. And then there's a knock on the door after the intercom, and he opens it, and Paul and Linda McCartney walk in. And they come in, and John just said, "This is our friend Elliot." And I said, "Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you, Linda." And we sat and we talked for a while. And then we went back into the white room. The sun was setting. And Linda and Yoko kind of went off on their own. Yoko always loved Linda McCartney. They got along great. And John and Paul kind of wandered over to this very, very tall window that looked down upon the west side of Manhattan. And the lights were coming on. You saw some of the Christmas decorations, etc. And I could pick up bits and pieces of conversation. In this case, because I could barely hear, they were far away, I can only catch spasms. And it was small talk, nothing of substance. And I do remember Paul asking John, "So you're making any music these days?" And John replying to Sir Paul, "No, my time is with me baby. That's what I do all the time. I don't make any music. What about you?" And Paul said, "I'm always making music. I make music every day of my life. I can't stop making music." And I thought to myself as I sat on the couch, what would have happened if John bit the bait and said, "I got a couple of guitars in the other room.
Yeah.
Why don't I bring them out, just for the hell of it?" And the two of them could have sat in the living room and maybe changed the face of contemporary music. One more time.
The Beatles are over, but John, Paul, George, and Ringo, God knows what relationship they'll have in the future. I don't know. I still love those guys because there'll always be those people that were that part of my life.